Hello, ladies. I am so excited to see you all and thank you all for being here for Sigma's for Good Health panel discussion. Now, we're all here today because if you've ever been on a airplane, the first thing they say is put your mask on first before you help others. And we all know as Black women, we always tend to want to help everyone in the family, in our village, our friends, our coworkers, everyone before we help ourselves. So today we're going to have a nice, casual, fun, comfortable conversation that where we focus on, good health practices for women, for our sisters, our aunts, our cousins, and really advocating, for ourselves. I'm going to start out by introducing myself and then introducing the panel, and then we'll get started with our fun discussion. So I am Zaretha Brickhouse. I'm a senior biopharmaceutical account manager with 25 years of healthcare experience advocating for patients and those who care for them. I also am the international programs coordinator for Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated, where I've passionately advocated for women and children for over 30 years. I take pride in serving the community, and thus I've expanded my role as an associate marriage and family therapist. I'm really excited to be here. I'll be your moderator for this discussion. First up, let's introduce Dr. Demetria McNeil. Now, I'm going to read her bio really slow because it literally is an entire SAT exam. Kidding. I'm super proud of her, but let's get started. So, Dr. Demetria McNeil is a PhD and has her MBA. She's the assistant professor of medicine at the University of Colorado School of Medicine. She is a communication scientist who specializes in cardiovascular disease disparities and health outcomes and equities in care delivery, and the dissemination and implementation of interventions designed to mitigate differences in community outcomes and care delivery. Dr. McNeil's work raises question of inequity, injustice, and communication across the healthcare landscape. Dr. McNeil's newly released book, You Don't Say, provides a practical approach coupled with real-world examples to understanding foundational concepts to improve interpersonal communication and relationships. Welcome, Dr. Bolden. That's her married name. We also have on our panel Dr. Wendy Felice Talley. She's internationally recognized corporate wellness expert with over 22 years of experience in the mental health field. As the founder and CEO of Felice Consulting Group, LLC, Dr. Talley has built a reputation as a thought leader in creating wellness programs for corporate and nonprofit organizations, utilizing EAP services and community resources to maximize employee mental health benefits. With her interactive and informative in-person and webinar training, Dr. Talley provides valuable insights for managers, leaders, and their staff to cultivate a culture of well-being within their organizations. Dr. Talley is also a member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated with 30 years of service to the community. Thank you for being here, Dr. Talley. And last but certainly not least, we have Carisha Davis. She is the Senior Director of HR and Compliance at her company. She also leads DE&I and works closely with her staff on wellness and accommodations. She has over 20 years combined legal, compliance, and HR experience. She's been a member of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority Incorporated since the fall of 1992, where she joined as an undergraduate at UCLA. She is the president and charter member of her chapter, Mu Chi Sigma Alumni Chapter, also known as the Port City SG Rose, which formed in October 5th, 2019. Welcome, Ms. Davis.
Thank you.
Well, all right, ladies. So as we mentioned, we're going to have a conversation on good health practices. I'm going to start out with some questions and just get your, thoughts and tips and really help, the folks out there, come up with, the goal at the end of this webinar is to have 7 good health practices that we can implement either this sorority year or this new year that we're starting. So, want to get started? Alrighty, I'm going to start with you, Dr. McNeil Bolden. You did not mention this in your bio, but I know you're very physically active, including being a spin class instructor in
I
all of
am.
your limited time you have left in your day. But what
That's
tips do
true.
you have for incorporating physical activity throughout the day for those of us with busy schedules?
Yes, Zarika, thank you so much for that question. And you're absolutely right. Most folks are extremely busy. And so trying to fit in any sort of physical activity can seem strenuous, daunting, and most people just will not do it because they feel like, quote, they don't have the time to do it. And what I would suggest and what I tell most folks, particularly around physical activity, is that a couple of things matter. One, an activity that you actually can do. That's one, and one that you actually kind of like to do. The other
Mm,
thing is when you're talking about fitting it across the day, there are a couple of things that come to mind. It Your body still benefits if you work out, for example, in 10 or 15-minute increments, 3 or 4
mm,
times across the day, right? So if you say, gosh, I don't have, quote, an hour to set
mm,
aside to physically work out. Great. Can you work out 10 minutes 3 times a day? And by work out, that could be, gosh, I take the stairs instead of taking the elevator, or when I take my break from working, I actually choose to take a walk around either the neighborhood or your building, etc., as a way so that there is movement with
mm.
your body. The other thing that I always encourage people is think about activities that you really enjoy doing that really allow you to not only engage in some physical activity, but also with other folks, right? So, things that I always say, think about things that you may like to do or that you love to do as a child, whether that's play basketball, kickball, baseball, all kind of things that you may have liked to do hobbies that are physically active. Those things also add up as it relates to staying active. So when you're really thinking about how do I fit this into quote my day, it's not an all or nothing. So it's like, gosh, Monday I didn't get to work out, so that's it. Like for the rest of the week, I can't do it. That's not that's not a good idea. You could still try to fit it in, whether it's that day, the next day, or even the day after if it got too busy for you. But it's always important to kind of be committed and think about a schedule where it's realistically for you to fit it in because it may not be the same time every day. That's the other thing.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, you just told me no more excuses. Is that what you just said?
That
Working
is
out,
what I
fit
am
it in?
telling you because it's possible. People do listen. People do what they want to do, right? And so when you really want to work out, like I said, I understand not having like a dedicated hour or 2 hours or whatever people feel is required to work out. The reality is you have to figure out what works for your body and your schedule. And you're right, there's no excuses to do, especially if you can fit in 10 minutes, twice
Right.
a day.
Okay, so no more using the excuse, I'm going to start on Monday. I just got to start today.
Every day's a Monday. Every day's a
Every day.
Monday.
Every day is a Monday. Okay. Okay. I think that's going to be one of our
Uh,
tips for good health practices. No waiting until Monday. Take the elevator instead of, I mean, take the stairs
Don't
instead
take
of
the
the
stairs.
elevator. Look, it's ingrained. Clearly, it's ingrained, and I have learned this as we go.
Oh,
I need to take the stairs instead of the
yes,
elevator and maybe go
yes.
for a walk on my break. Okay.
Yep.
I think the people got it. I think the people got it.
All
Let's
right.
talk a little more seriously now
Yep.
with you, Dr. Bolden. Talk with us about how to communicate with family and friends to get annual health screenings from a place of love instead of maybe what we usually do as women and be like, you need to go and get your checkup. How do we have that conversation so maybe we can encourage them to actually
Yeah.
get to the appointment?
Yeah, that's a great point, and particularly within our culture, that is just a topic that unfortunately is overlooked a lot. And so, what I will say is, when we talk about, I'll even extend your question. When we talk about annual health screens, those are absolutely important. But because of what I see that happens in the healthcare system, because of what I see in poor outcomes, because of the things that I see when I'm having to have conversations with families when they have an unexpected event that has occurred, is beyond. The annual screenings are absolutely helpful, but there should be a conversation about healthcare overall. And by that, I mean the medications that you're taking, whatever the medical recommendations are that you should or should not be following. When you talk about diagnoses and sort of next steps and what that looks like, when we even begin to think about what planning looks like in terms of who's going to be the decision maker if you're
Mhm.
unable to make medical decisions. So if we talk about, so I wanted to set it up to say my response is going to include or come from a space of all of those ideas in mind. And so when you're approaching your friends and your family members, like you said, you do not want it to be an ultimatum, right?
Mhm.
um, there are there's what's really interesting about healthcare is oftentimes people do not talk about it, or do not they're not actively pursuing, or excuse me, seeking preventative measures out of fear.
Yeah.
They may feel stigmatized, right? So there's a lot that goes along with just healthcare, because sometimes people don't want to know. They're happy to not know and feel like, gosh, whenever it's my time, that's my time. But
Yeah.
as a friend and a family member, it's important to say, when you say from a space of care and not one of fear or requirement or whatever, is to say, look, I really want to keep you around as long as possible. And in order to do that, I want to have my best health, and I want to help you have your best health. Because I think that's ultimately what it really is. But we have to go a step further and not sort of put the onus exclusively on the person or the friend. Because if you're there to truly support them, then you have to be able to walk out what supporting them looks like. And that could be offering to take them to the doctor appointment, or to the pharmacist, to the pharmacy, or whatever, working with, or even having a conversation with them before they're going to a medical appointment, and say, hey, what are the questions that you have for everyone that you're going to see tomorrow, whether it's the doctor, the medical assistant, the pharmacist, the diabetes educator, whoever you're going to see. Let's talk through like the questions that you may have, or things that have been bothering you, etc. So you want to make sure that when you're having the conversations, you're not just suggesting things that they should do, but you're actually talking through what it would look like for them to be able to complete some of the asks that are there, but then also get their opinion. Right? It's always important to hear from people, because there's a reason why. If someone isn't getting annual health screens, there's a reason why. There just
Mhm.
is. And it could be as simple as, I don't have time to go to the doctor, or I feel like I don't have time to go to the doctor, or I am scared. I'm
Okay.
scared of what
Mhm.
the result is going to be. And that is great. That is a starting place, so that it's like, great, I now can meet you where you are, and we can have a conversation, because you don't have to be scared. I will be here, with you. We can meet with the doctor together. I'll have, questions, et cetera, et cetera. So I think when you talk about being able to work with your or have conversations with your family and friends about not only annual screenings, but just their general health and general medications and general medical recommendations that they should follow. The conversation really has to start with them and what their fears and beliefs are about their health, but also their relationship with their healthcare community. Because that's another thing, is that if they do not feel comfortable with their particular doctor, or the clinic, or the hospital that they are currently connected with, that could also create sort of a division with their ability in seeking care, which means it could be something as simple. Let's find you a different doctor. That's doable.
Right. Got it. So if I'm hearing you correctly, it's really asking questions first rather than
Oh,
making a
absolutely.
demand. It's asking questions to
Yes, ma'am.
uncover what's going on, and then, partnering with that family and friend
Yes.
in a discussion. Got it.
Yeah, but then
Communication.
also it's also sharing yes, that. But then also sharing where it's coming from. Where's the general interest coming from? Because usually it is
Mhm.
coming from, I want, I want you to be healthy. I want to be able
Right.
to help you be healthy, right? So it's not just, oh, you should do this because I'm quote trying to tell you what to do. It's
Right.
really from a space of I care about you and
Right.
I really want you to be healthy. Yeah.
Right. So, Dr. Tally, let's get you into this discussion a little bit. Um, can you share with the people some recommendations for mindfulness practices to help them de-stress when work, school, and family life is lifing? Maybe explain what is mindfulness, and then give them some simple tips similar to what Dr. Bolden shared with incorporating it a little bit at a time throughout the day.
Well, absolutely. Thank you, for this question, because this is definitely something that you, it's not a new topic. A lot of people think they're just hearing about it in the last few years, especially around the pandemic time. This is a new topic. Actually, it's not. Mindfulness has been around since the 1970s. And so, but it's not something that, because of the health and stigma, it's not something that's been shared around the coffee table, and all of that. So this is not a new concept, but it's a concept that is now popularized because of celebrities and the pandemic, and with young
Mhm.
millennials and zennials and things like that. So mindfulness is about a connection of really understanding how to be present in the moment. A lot of times we are scattered, we are out of sorts, and so we're so busy. And so mindfulness is about being present in the moment. It is about connecting with self and everything that is around you. And also to being mindful of how your body, with everything that's going on with your body, how that connects with your mental health and our thoughts, our emotions, and then how those things interact with our social life. And
Mhm.
so we use mindfulness in work, we use mindfulness in the classroom, we use mindfulness in the gym, trying to motivate us on that spin class you taught out, because honey, we need it, okay? Because it's not going down. It's not, okay? And so that is kind of something that, we want to take into account with mindfulness. And so some great tips that I always encourage a lot of my clients, because I work with a lot of working professionals and their families. A lot of times people who are in the working world, they're professionals, and those that are degreed, they don't really think that they need help, and they do, okay? Understand.
Right.
And so, and their families, because they really need to really reconnect with self, the universe, the community, to their home life, to their spirituality, in all of those different things. So some great tips. One, to being mindful is the art of doing nothing. And I'm
Mm.
not saying just sit there and just stare at yourself. And I'm not saying just to sit there and scroll on TikTok, even though I do personally need some therapy with that. But it also definitely it means about the art of doing nothing is being connected with self. That can entail meditation. That can also entail, exercise. You exercising alone with self and really connecting and really saying, okay, what's going on with my body as I am allowing it to perform? The art of
Mhm.
doing nothing, being able to go to the beach, go and do some yoga by yourself, being able to treat yourself by yourself, and whatever that may be, that you are not doing something that's going to require a lot of mental work, and strenuous and stress, that you are allowing yourself to reconnect and stay connected with yourself. Another great mindfulness technique is definitely a technique where a lot of people don't think about it too often, but are doing more, is gardening. Gardening is
Mm.
definitely something that people need to do more often. That green thumb. And I want to make sure folks are not, getting me confused with the other type of green thumb, but it is the green thumb with the flowers and the plants, things like that. That is definitely something you want to. Sorry about that. I'm moving my camera. But that is definitely something that you want to be able to do. Get outside, touch the grass,
Mm.
have your toes touch the grass, right?
Mhm.
Go outside and walk with your bare feet in the sand, right? That's what you want to be able to do, is do that. So those are some great techniques. Also, too, mindfulness with kids. I know some people are like, I want to get away from my kids. You teach your kids mindfulness techniques. They know how to sit quietly. They know how to meditate. They know how to read a book to themselves. Guess what happens? You can do that with them. And so those are some great, just really quick techniques. Oh, one more thing that I love. If you are a speed demon like me, you got a motorcycle, you got a moped, whatever you want to do, a bike, go out and ride and just feel the sun, let the sun kiss you. So those are some techniques that I would say we can all start doing right now.
Wow. So if I'm hearing you correctly, when I was growing up, Hattie B said we were playing the quiet game. Do you think that was some mindfulness when she was like, we're just going to sit here and be quiet, not ask me any questions? Don't ask me for a snack. Okay.
Absolutely. And we still play those quiet games sometimes. That's called the do not disturb button. Okay. That's the send it to voicemail, scroll. Okay.
Yes.
That's what we do now as adulting.
Got it. Okay. We're going to get back to you with some more questions, but let's get our HR executive, Carisha, in this conversation. So we're listening to the Calm app while we're taking a walk on our break or hitting the stairs instead of the elevator. Why don't you share with us, how can employees advocate, for some of this wellness equipment that we're hearing about, like walking desk or even getting reimbursement for gym memberships? Can you share anything with us about that?
Sure. So for me, and I think this is important for any HR department, is to have an open door policy and really mean that, so that my experience just in HR has been that people tend to be a little nervous if HR calls. I've set calls with people and it just says HR conversation and they're freaking out. So creating that relationship with HR to where the employees feel like they can actually come to the department if they have a request. Okay. I think that's point number one. The other point is letting managers know that these are completely normal requests. Ergonomic requirements it's a thing of today. Stand-up desks, I want to say half my team has a stand-up desk. Empowering managers to have a budget for such things. We're not talking about accommodations. Now, those are absolutely necessary. If you've got someone who has a medical need or something that restricts their ability to do their job, that's handled differently. But in my opinion, a request shouldn't have to have a medical note or some additional, support for it. It should be, hey, this is going to help me to make my job a little easier. This is going to help me to stay on track, or I'm trying to lose weight. And I think having a walking treadmill will help me with that. There's studies that I'm sure our doctors on the panel can discuss that talk about, the value of being mobile and active and how much more productive you are at work. So part of it is just the change management of making sure that managers understand these requests are normal. These requests are going to help your staff to be more productive and to be happier, quite frankly. If you have people who feel comfortable making those requests and they feel like they have, a space that really works for them, they're much more inclined to be productive, to be there, to do the things that they want to do. So I think making sure managers understand that these are normal and giving them a budget and creating that safe space for employees to come and say, hey, I was thinking it would really help me out if, I could stand for part of the day, or coming to HR and saying, hey, are there any suggestions that you have about how I can, my back's hurting. This whole idea of having what I would call accommodations, but ergonomic, add-ons, it's actually, it helps with workers' compensation. It helps with injuries on the job, lower back pain, carpal tunnel. There's a lot of things that we see less of when we're able to actually accommodate our workers. I have a stand-up desk. Periodically, I'll just, I'm starting to get a little creaky. I don't want to attribute that to age, but, I'll stand that desk up and it's just a different way of working. And, then when I sit back down, I feel like, okay, I needed that. Right. So it's just letting everyone know the importance of those things and how it can actually cut down on injuries.
Right. That leads me, kind of into the next part of the discussion I wanted to have with you, which is, if employees have ideas, for like a mindfulness room or a lunchtime walking group, like what's the best approach that they can take for gaining company support and even funding if needed, if they're not at a company, like you mentioned, where there is this open door policy or there is this safe relationship with HR?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the best place is if you have that safe relationship. But if you don't, I would recommend creating a proposal beforehand, letting your company
Mhm.
know this is what I'm trying to do. This is how it will benefit. This is what the cost is, or maybe finding things that actually have no cost. Yoga, doing things that are already available online. There's plenty of YouTube videos, plenty of things that you can access and gain support of your peers if you want to do that. But I would definitely recommend coming up with a proposal for your manager, because if you think about the biggest concern for a manager is going to be, what about me? How is this going to affect me?
Right.
What about my bottom line? Are y'all going to be out for too long? What are you guys doing?
Mhm.
And that's just the reality. They're not thinking about the actual health or spiritual or emotional benefit that comes with knowing I can take a walk, knowing that I can have a group. My particular group, we had a young lady who she does sound baths. Now, I didn't know what a sound bath was. I really thought it had to do with some sort of bath. And she asked us, did we want a sound bath? And I was like, no, thank you.
It's
That
a
doesn't
nightmare.
sound fun to me, and I don't think we should be doing that. And she's explained what it was, and we did one. And I'll be honest, I was like, I don't know about it, but I'm going to go because I want to support my staff. And it was so well attended, and she was so humbled by the fact that there were multiple people throughout the company at the corporate site who really wanted that. It kind of opened our eyes to the fact that there are a lot of people at work who are stressed during the day, and
Mhm.
just taking this 20 to 30 minutes, they were willing to use their lunch for it. And that's the other piece is, are you willing to use your lunch break to entertain some of these activities? And if you are, that kind of opens the door sometimes to where the employer then says, hey, this was really beneficial. And
Mhm.
she's done 3 since, and each one has more and more attendance. It inspires people to also come up with ideas that would be helpful. So I think you start small and you start with things that don't cost a lot, especially if you have a very cost conscientious boss. And then you go from there. Because once you get the buy-in of something that is either free, as we used to say, free 99, or it's free 99, or it doesn't take a lot of time and it's really not going to have a huge impact on the employer, that really opens the door to further conversation about, what more we can do, wellness newsletters. You really start opening the door to further conversation, healthy snacks. I mean, the sky's the limit when it comes to things you can do at work that actually really don't cost a lot.
Great. Well, thank you for that tidbit of information. That was really, really beneficial. I'm going to jump in here now. We have Dr. Courtney Cooper has joined us, and Dr. Cooper is actually the lead on the grant that we have with Good Health Wins through NCNW and the CDC, and we're excited to have her here. I know you were stuck in some nasty traffic, but you sure do look gorgeous and you're glowing. And we're happy to have you here. And just to kind of continue on Carisha's conversation, she mentioned about healthy snacks. I thought I'd bring you into the conversation, Dr. Cooper, to share with us what tips can you offer for incorporating a healthy, balanced diet into a busy on-the-go lifestyle or during the day at work?
Thank you for having me. Yes, traffic was very hectic, but I finally made it. So one thing I would say in terms of tips for healthy eating, especially when you have a busy lifestyle, is one, remembering to eat. Schedule your meals so that you know that although the day is hectic, that you already have your meal prepared, so you know exactly what you're going to eat. You're not trying to find it. Usually that helps in terms of, being able to eat during those busy times. I always say add veggies to every meal, and the vegetable should be the star of the meal. Fruit is good, and I like that people enjoy fruit, but I want also them to remember that it's full of natural sugar. and too much can go wrong. So you want to be mindful of that as well. Also, pay attention to serving sizes. So although it's on the go, check the package, right? It might be on the go for two, even though you think with the way it looks, it's on the go for one. So, mind your portions, read the labels. Those are all important things to do, especially if you're eating on the go. Make sure you're drinking your water, right? Our body is 70% of water. We want to make sure that we stay hydrated. So you want to make sure you do that. And I also would say do things that you can live with because it's a lifestyle, right? If you begin to incorporate things into your lifestyle that is not really what you can live with, then it's probably not going to last long. So those are some of the tips that I would say usually helps. Oh, one last thing I would say. The ideal meal is a good source of protein, vegetables, complex carbs, and a healthy fat. And if your every meal looks like that, then you should do well maintaining a healthy, balanced diet.
So a cheeseburger, fries, and a strawberry shake at In-N-Out. You mentioned the complex carbs. Is that the fries? The
No, none of
healthy
those are
fat, is that the
if
shake?
if
No?
if the complex carb, if it's a sweet potato fry, you've reached complex.
Okay.
Anything white, so white bread, white potatoes, it's a simple carb, and usually those don't do well in our bodies.
Okay. Okay, so I need to write to the CEO at In-N-Out and ask him to up their game and add sweet potatoes so I can get some complex carbs in my life.
Yes,
Okay.
so you can
So
have
noted.
your shake.
And then I can have my shake. Yay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So we're going to take it to the next level and get a little deeper in this conversation. We're going to keep it with you, Dr. Cooper. And let's say the pandemic is over now. What's next? Does the Black and Brown community, can we go back to business as usual, or do we still have to get vaccinations, boosters, flu shots? What are we doing?
Yeah. So thank God the pandemic is over, right? However, COVID-19, the flu, as well as other viruses that cause vaccine preventable diseases are still here, right? So the current recommendation is for those aged 6 months and above should get a COVID booster. Now it's only one shot for everybody, whether regardless of you had no shots or not, you still will get one shot. The annual flu shot during flu season, and then based off your age, as well as if you have chronic medical conditions, then you should get some of the other vaccines that will prevent certain diseases if the virus attacks you. I will say that keeping up to date with vaccines is very important. Not only will it decrease transmission, it also keeps you safe, your loved ones safe, your community safe. And it also keeps those safe that may not be able to get vaccines because of whatever medical conditions they may have, and they may be more vulnerable to infections. So vaccines are definitely effective, but everybody or most people should be getting those vaccines, right? If we don't put them in the bodies, then they won't do us any good.
Okay. I hear you loud and clear. I hear you loud and clear. But it brings us to another topic of discussion. We're going to get you back in the conversation, Dr. Bolden. How can we get more members of the Black and Brown community involved in medical research to reduce, hopefully, and improve our trust in the medical community and reduce the health inequities that you talk about in your work?
Yeah, so that is a great question with a very complicated answer, but I will do my best to present and do justice to a response for such a topic as this. I think when we talk about Black and Brown communities in the United States in particular, these are communities that have been minoritized. These are communities that have been discriminated against. These are communities that have systemically been oppressed. So let's start there. When we talk about what does medical research look like and getting involved, I will say this. What I seek to do in all of the projects and every person that I touch across the healthcare center is be the voice. be the voice for the people that look like me. And that's because that voice has been absent. And so when you talk about medical research and the hesitancy to get involved, what I have learned and come to understand is although the historical nature of the heinous acts that have been committed against Black and Brown people in for the sake of health and science, right? So without abandoning that, but extending that to the fact that a lot of folks now are not necessarily participating in research or even seeking healthcare, not necessarily because of what has happened years ago, but because of what happened to them last Tuesday. I mean, you understand what I'm saying? Like these things are not distant. A lot of what people are experiencing in the healthcare system that makes them not want to engage, that makes them feel as if they were biased against, that there was prejudice, that they, in some kind of way, they felt they were being treated different. These are not the stories of old. This is what people are living today. Now, with that said, I will say that every individual is an expert of their own body, period. You live in it every single day. So you know when something doesn't feel right, look right, sound right, you know that. And when you are attempting to seek health care and you feel as if you're being dismissed, and they are, because that is common, the issue is you know your body, period. You are an expert in your body. And so you have to, with support, as we talked about earlier, from family and friends, and you have to keep asking and seeking help and making someone listen to you. Now, as it relates to research and what that looks like, I think that it's important for us to participate because our voices have to be present for there to be solutions and money and resources allocated. Oftentimes, when you think about diseases that have an abundance of resources attached to them, they are not necessarily diseases that are highly prevalent in our communities comparative to other diseases that may sometimes are unique and very distinct in other cultures, and there's a lot of resource to support them. Yet there are less folks with those diseases than there are with some diseases that primarily will affect exclusively sometimes Black and Brown folks, and that's because there aren't enough folks that are doing the research to look into what the issues are, but then also the participation is necessary. And again, I mentioned that a lot of times people don't participate. I mentioned because of their experience, but another reason that's so simple but is also true is they haven't been asked. On my end, there is an assumption that, oh, these communities are quote unquote hard to reach. That's not a term I use, and that's a different conversation for a different panel. I don't get into why I don't like using the hard to reach community as a term because that's ridiculous. But they oftentimes are simply not asked. And so I think that it's a question and an inquiry that all of us have to have, because that's the other piece is people that are Black and Brown can't be the only ones that are interested in research that affects Black and Brown people.
Right.
The entire science community, the entire healthcare system, the entire medical community has to be interested for there to be progress.
Yeah, you make a valid point there with the interest, and that leads me, to our next discussion with Dr. Cooper on that same vein. Like, how do we advocate for ourselves in this space of a biased medical field who believes the insane Black girl magic means we don't feel pain and other such nonsense? So they're not inviting us to be in studies because they're like, well, they got this Black girl magic stuff. They don't need to be in the study. They'll just whip out some of that magic. So, how do we advocate for ourselves?
Well, Black Girl Magic is wonderful. However, it goes back to what the other panelists said, right? It starts with our voice. That's the most powerful thing we have. If we can't use our own voice, then using others' voice that we trust. I always advise anyone that if you ask a question and it doesn't sound right, keep asking questions. And if
Mhm.
they can't give you the answer that makes you feel comfortable with moving forward, then find another opinion, find another option. I think a lot of times we get into situations where we may not understand what is being explained to us. And for whatever reason, that provider doesn't know how to explain it to us, unfortunately. And so I say when that happens, that you have to go to the trusted messengers to really kind of get to the bottom of how you should move forward. And I think that's what happens a lot of times. You'll hear so many cases where they are, I was saying this, I was saying this, I was saying this, but it wasn't until this happened that, they answer me. I will say, like, when I go to the doctor, I don't mention that I'm a doctor because I want to
Mhm.
see how they treat the patients that I send them. And based off of that, they don't find out that I'm a doctor until the end of the visit because I want
Mhm.
to know, like, are you treating people right? And that's, when my sisters or my family go to the doctor and it's not feeling right, I tell them, okay, let them know that your sister's a doctor. And then that's when, like, everybody wants to answer all the questions. That's very unfortunate. But whoever those trusted messengers are in your community, those are the people that you
Mhm.
should lean on, especially when you feel your voice is not being heard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. And so, Dr. Tally, we're talking about, advocating and using our voice and the stigma and the reduction of, stigma around mental health. Now, there seems to be a lot less stigma among younger members of the Black and Brown communities, and they're openly discussing their mental health issues. We see it in athletes and celebrities. Um, so it seems that everybody has a diagnosis now. They're dialing in on the text message or, getting help through a telephone call. How can we know, as the nurturers and the ones who are always helping in the family, how can we know when it's capped as an excuse to avoid accountability or truly someone in need of help?
Well, that's a great question. And you are right. Because now that we are so focused on, mental health and emotional well being and how it's being utilized, we also got to be careful of how it's being manipulated as well. Because of
Mhm.
the fact that people can use this to get out of work, to be able to go to work, to not be able to function because they're choosing to not feel good. There's a difference with that. So, first and foremost, if someone is feeling this way, we want, as a family, as a community, especially our Black and Brown community, because we have this stigma. If we don't go to the Bible, if we don't go to the church, if we don't go to a synagogue, oh, then it's nothing. Don't even worry about it. Just pray it away. We're
Mhm.
going into Psalms, we're going into Genesis, but not realizing that if you believe in God, God created all things, then He also created the education to be able to have those things treated. And so, with that being said, first and foremost, family, listen. Just listen to what they want, what they are saying, and all of those kinds of things. That's the first thing. Then immediately have them see somebody.
Mhm.
That's a way to tell if somebody is being capped, on that whole situation. Because it's harder to sit in front of somebody like myself, Dr. Cooper, Dr. Voda, and say this, and we're looking at you and we just tilted our head, because we could tell whether you read something on Google, okay, or you've been listening to some of these rappers and all the stuff that they're going through or what have you. We can tell when it sounds scripted. And also
Mhm.
too, it's an alignment of patterns of behaviors and thought patterns. So understanding that mental health is not just something that, oh, I'm gonna talk to you and then I feel better. It is not just a talking field. It is a field of treatment where we work to treat the brain in concert with medical doctors and nutritionists and various different people, that we look at the whole person. So
Mhm.
that's the first thing we want to be able to do, is to look at the fact that how is their words are aligning with what it is that they're doing in their behavior, right? And
Mhm.
then also too, are they making the effort? if they're not making the effort to really, step into healing space and start the healing journey, I know it's difficult and I know it's hard, but it doesn't take forever, right? And so we have to make sure that we are in alignment with that. So that's what we have to be very careful when it comes to making sure somebody's not using it as a manipulation or an excuse, because it has to be in alignment and it has to be consistent and it's timely. And so I'm not going to give out what the times are, because then I don't want people to start, setting their calendars up, and then now they got the Google going off and then all that other stuff, so we're not going to do that. So no, don't ask me. Okay. But, us medical doctors, we know those little tidbits so that we can be able to get those things recognized. And if you just be honest, hey, that's still good. Honesty is still good. Just let us know. Maybe you're having a moment. It may not be a mental illness. It may be you having a season. You're stressed out at work. You didn't get your stand-up desk. Or what have you, and you just having a fit. You mad at HR, right? Okay, let's walk through that. But whatever it may be, do not, and I have to say this with every ounce of my body, don't minimize mental health, because there are people out there that really need the support, that really need the care, and we don't want those things to be taken away from them because we got people that are manipulating the system. So be mindful.
Awesome. That is a great tip. That is a great tip, and beneficial, because we're all in the community together, or we're managers, supervisors, employers, and we want to make sure that we're not minimizing, or we want to make sure that we're creating, safe, environments for people to be able to speak, honestly and authentically. So that brings us back to you, Carisha, as an HR executive. Like we said, the pandemic is over. We're back outside. Employers now have all these empty buildings, and they're like, okay, we got to fill these buildings back up with people because we're stuck in this lease for 10 more years. So,
Right.
How can managers, supervisors help employees to integrate back into the office and yet, maintain, healthy, happy, productive employees who, feel that they can share with supervisors if they're having a mental season or moment, or really actually need to use their EAP, benefits. How do they, how can you support managers and supervisors?
So I'm glad you had this on my list of questions, because this is it's a hot topic for employers who allowed their staff to work remotely during COVID. And so that this question of, well, how do we bring everybody back is a hot topic in HR. One of the best ways to do it is to have those conversations. One, see if there's ways to gradually move people back. We had to undergo an entire change management process. Those employers who wanted to do a night and day type of thing, you were at home for 2 years. I need you, I'll see you Monday morning at 8, completely unsuccessful. New employees, people are asking for remote work. This is kind of the new wave of things. I was talking to another executive. People are actually very offended that you would even expect them to go to work 5 days a week. I mean, why do I have to go to work 5 days? It's really kind of putting people out. And, they're used to working in their robe. They're used to having the camera off, and, it's the commute is down the hall. So the change management piece has to be present, and the boss, the employer, needs to understand that part. If you want your employees to come back, which my boss is old school, he doesn't understand any of this. He wants to know why the parking lot is empty, and he wants to see the parking lot full. So there has to be a gradual change management. We have to start talking about hybrid schedules and then just shortening that time, right? A lot of people adjusted their entire life around being remote. So whether that's daycare schedules, being able to pick up a child, being able to participate in a child's sport, even, I'm not bound to the confines of a 9 to 5 necessarily. I can kind of get my work done at different times. So they've adjusted their life around it. So we have to actually allow them to readjust back into the office. So that's one thing. Something that we do is try to create what I would call the comforts of home. So we're a pet friendly environment. We allow pets to come into work. That has helped tremendously because for one, animals can be they can actually be a comfort source. You can have an anxiety pet, but we have found that those who are able to bring their pets to work, they feel almost like it's part of home, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of having to leave your pet at home, you get to bring your pet with you. And that makes you feel a little bit more like, okay, this is like a happy medium for me. The other thing we did was we rolled out a FTO policy right at the time that we were asking everybody to come back. We said, okay, well, we're going to get rid of PTO and we're going to roll out this more flexible arrangement for you. That way, if you grew accustomed to having those days where you could go watch, Susie play soccer, or you got to coach Tommy's team every other Thursday or whatever it is, you can still do that with the FTO policy. Now there's rules around it and all of that. People can't just take advantage of it, but the best way to undo something that seemed a little bit comfortable for folks is to really kind of give options so that it doesn't seem like you're just taking things away, immediately. You mentioned EAP. For some people, honestly, going back to work like that is a little bit anxiety producing, whether it's traffic or working amongst colleagues again. Sometimes that's just a little bit stressful. So I think making sure that they have resources available, knowing who to reach out to, whether it's HR, benefits, or whoever it is, understanding who they need to go to if they start to have problems, or they're just starting to feel like, this is too much, because that's the age we're in, where sometimes working in the office 5 days a week, we joke about it a little bit, but for some people it is just, it's a lot. Mm-hmm. So you got to be a little flexible.
Mm-hmm. Amen to that. And we're coming close to the end, but I had one last question for you, Dr. Talley. We talked about, our mental health, our physical health. Now let's marry the two together and share with us your thoughts about the role physical activities play in improving mental health outcomes.
Well, when I was given this question and walking into the space of menopause and 50 years old, I started, I'm in this space now where I'm thinking about not so much about losing weight and being thin. I like the thickness. I like curves. I look good, right? Amen. Praise the Lord. But what I wanted is to have a body that moved without pain, right? Mm-hmm. What is that like? A body to move without pain. And so I think what we need to do when it comes to physical movement, it actually improves your mental health. It improves if you're dealing with high functioning depression, if you're dealing with anxiety, if you're dealing with low self-esteem, low confidence, you're dealing with stress at work, move, get up and move, walk, stretch, yoga, whatever those things are, definitely to move, get out and I mentioned about spin class. Listen, when you got those legs and hips moving, okay, and you're really trying to get that body in shape in a sense of not having a 26-inch waist, but you just want to look good and feel good. What happens is that it releases those endorphins in your brain. So I'm not a neurologist, I'm a doctor of social work, but I do have to understand the brain and capacity. And the doctors, y'all keep me on track here. When you release those endorphins in your brain, it releases that happiness. It releases those, it clears up your mind. It begins to help you think a lot more clearly in those spaces. And you can actually make better decisions, right? And so those are great physical activities that you can definitely do. Let's go back to the kitchen. Dr. Cooper, you talk about cooking. Let's talk about relationships. If you're having problems in your relationships, start cooking together. Start cooking together, and really start sharing dishes and talk about, spices and textures and feed each other. Those brings out those connections and reconnections and chemistries and things like that when it comes to improving your mental health. If you're dealing with something a little bit more chronic, okay, then we want to talk to our medical provider and our psychiatrist if you need medication. I'm not opposed to medication. I don't prescribe it, but I will say this. Make sure you speak to your medical professional about that, and that it's something that won't hinder your ability to move and to be able to be functional. Roller skate, double dutch, anything that will, yes, double dutch, absolutely. Hand and eye coordination. Remember that in elementary school, right? We got to get back to playing. We stopped playing. What was the age that we stopped playing? We stopped playing at 16 years old because we thought we were grown, right? We stopped coloring at 13. No, get back to coloring, get back to double dutch and running. If don't get on the big wheel, don't do that, because then Dr. Cooper gotta go trying to get Dr. Bowden. They got that kind of time in the schedule to come and get you and peel you off the ground. But at the same time, those physical activities improves your overall mental health and relationships. I have noticed, and lastly, I have noticed that as I'm getting older and I'm moving more, I'm actually able to problem solve better. I'm able to problem solve. I'm able to slow down and disconnect from the internet. Please, people, unplug. That false sense of fantasy and reality is not working for your mental health and your physical activity, because it's good to watch other people work out, but if you're not participating, right, then you're just sitting there marinating in yourself, right? So those would be those tips for when it comes to physical activity and mental health.
Great. Those are excellent tips. I think one thing I would add on top of that tip was take the filters off too, because you're also giving yourself, anxiety and low self-esteem, because you no longer can, see a photo of your true authentic self. So I would definitely throw that in there. And we did promise the people as we wrap up that we would give them, 7 good health practices that they could implement, going forward into the year. And we talked about walking on your break, taking the stairs instead of the elevator. We talked about being creative and offering suggestions or proposals to your employer for wellness benefits. Dr. Cooper talked to us about meal prepping, adding veggies and staying hydrated. Dr. Talley talked to us about, getting exercise, being active, roller skating, yoga, stretching, the Calm app. And then, of course, we're going to take Dr. Bolden's spin class so that we can get our legs and hips moving. Are there any other good health practices, tips that we want to offer to the ladies to implement? Dr. Bolden, we'll start with you. One quick tip.
And this is a tip to do what?
That they can implement a good health practice. Maybe to advocate for themselves at the doctor or something.
I think, no, what's a good health tip? And yeah, we can go with that. Yeah, I think so. When you are visiting the doctor, I think a good health tip is to not only be honest with whoever you're interacting with, whether that is the pharmacist. I said everyone. So tell everybody everything, whoever you are in front of, make sure you're telling each of them. But I also think it's about not only sort of being honest with them, but being honest with yourself about your health and what your expectations are around it and how you feel about it and what you think. I really enjoyed hearing from our other panelists saying, hey, I just want to move without pain, right? That's a great goal. And for us and for folks to have, you said one tip, it's have your health goals, to be able to set them, think about them. It's a think about what the health goals are for you, and to be able to express that when you're in a healthcare setting and be able to communicate that with your family and your friends.
All right. Dr. Cooper, you got a quick tip for the people?
I would say believe in the value you bring. And I think that helps in every area. And I also would say that remember about self-care, and self-care includes your mental health, your physical health, and even your wealth health.
Right. Dr. Talley, one last tip for the people. You gave us a lot already.
Yes, and this is maybe a little controversial, but my girls are going to understand this. We need life balance. And so, whether if you are a spiritual person or you're struggling still in the trap lifestyle, if you just merge those two together and listen to your spiritual stuff, and then every now and again you got to drop it like it's hot, go ahead. Please do. Go in your living room, turn on your 90s music, turn on your Cardi B or your Megan Stallion, because if you take the spin class, then you're going to be able to drop really good. You get back up, right? So every single morning I listen to my TD Jakes.
Mhm.
Hallelujah. Okay. And then in the shower, I go ahead and make sure that I got my Megan going on, because I got to make sure I look good and I feel good. So I get these Megan Stallion knees going, okay? Because I got stuff I got to do. And so that you got to keep that balance. So it's okay to be your authentic self. Whether if you love trap music or whether you are spiritual or whatever, bring the two together and be your full self. Don't be just one-sided. Be your full self and be you. And don't worry about being somebody else, because you are just enough.
Awesome. Do you have any work tips you could give the people, Carisha?
I don't know if it's work. I suppose it could apply. But I think and I guess it applies to work as well as personal, but having a guilt-free boundary.
Mhm.
When it comes to your personal life, I would just say it kind of goes back to what you said in the beginning about putting your mask on first. I think all the women on the panel can attest to putting a lot of people first and then feeling bad if you have to say, no, I can't do that. Trust me when I say the first time you do it, it starts to feel good. And the next time you do it, it starts to feel right. And the third time you do it, you're like, this is just the way I want to live.
Mhm.
At work, I think it applies because for me, I have a tendency to overwork or to take it home, to leave work and then come back here, take a couple hours and then start it up again. I think we all can probably relate to that as well as Black women, feeling like we have to overachieve just to meet our other counterparts who are, just achieving here. I got to be here. That imposter syndrome and that whole fallacy is just simply not true. Hopefully it isn't true for you in your workplace. And if it is, just start creating healthy boundaries where you say, I'm a hard worker. I already know that, but I'm not available to
Right.
you 24/7, because that is the quickest, most direct route to burnout. And, we don't want to see any of that, especially if we're happy in our jobs. If you
Mhm.
like your job, that's a very quick way to become very unhappy in your space. So that's my
Well,
tip.
that's a lovely, lovely tip and a great
I
way.
might have got it from you.
You probably did, and I will send you a bill for that, by the way.
Thank you. I'll accept it.
But ladies, it has been an amazing conversation and journey with you over this last hour. I thank you so much for your time and thank you for your tips and sharing your expertise. I hope the people got their 7 tips and they are ready to implement them and have an amazing, amazing, healthy and productive life. I thank you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful holiday weekend.